Welcome to the Terrible Podcast with your hosts from SteelersDepot.com, where you can find all your latest and greatest Steelers news. It's Dave Bryan and Alex Kozora, always lit, talking Steelers. And now, here's Dave and Alex.
Welcome to the Terrible Podcast, Season 12, Episode number 78. He's Dave Bryan. I'm Alex Kozora, SteelersDepot.com. Glad you guys are back with us here for this Monday show. Unfortunately, Dave, the Steelers season has come to an end. It lasted longer than I think most of us anticipated from where we stood just a couple weeks ago. But you run into the buzzsaw that are the Kansas City Chiefs, and you walk away with a loss, not one that's surprising by any means, but still, as it always is, every season when you're not hoisting the Lombardi, a disappointing end to the Steelers season.
Yeah, absolutely. And thought the game might have been a little bit closer than it was. And once it got away from him, big time. And now you kind of see why the line was as big as it was on this one, because once that Kansas City Chiefs offense started rolling there, the Steelers didn't have any answers for that, not only defensively, but they couldn't do anything on offense to help match that either. So really, you essentially got a repeat of what happened back in week 16. And, I don't know about you looking at some of these games around the NFL this weekend. I'm not so sure that extra playoff berth there is been worth it so far there. But at least the Steelers got an extra game out of it. One extra game for Ben Roethlisberger, and everything came crashing to an end Sunday night in Kansas City.
Yeah, not a good weekend for 7 seeds from the Keystone State, where the Eagles and the Steelers both get blown out by the Bucs and the Chiefs again. Not a major surprise, of course, but still disappointing in the final game of the Steelers season. And, of course, the final game of Ben Roethlisberger's career, 42-21, again, the final in Arrowhead last night. So we'll begin the transition to the offseason, of course, in the coming days and weeks. But for today, Dave, let's talk about the game. Let's talk about what happened before the game briefly, and then we'll get into the on-field action. Last night, the team did activate JuJu Smith-Schuster to play in the game, so he came off of IR officially just before the 4 o'clock deadline on Saturday. Let me get an official snap count of what he had in this game, unless you have it, Dave. Played, rotated in probably about that 25 snap mark that we kind of pegged him for. Actually, no, it was a lot more than that.
52 snaps for this one. Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, I don't know if some of that was coming. They were rotating him in early, and then maybe he was playing more late when it was catch-up mode, and, maybe just adrenaline kind of pushing him through. But, he didn't obviously have an every down kind of role, 76% of the snaps. Some of that may have come late, but JuJu back. And so at the very least, it was cool to see him out there one last time this season, one last time with Ben. Will it be one last time as a Pittsburgh Steeler? We'll have to wait and see on his future.
Yeah, really a testament to his hard work and him getting back. I really, I had my tinfoil hat on tight, thinking that why are they getting him going on a Thursday there, and is this just a gamemanship aspect of it here? But lo and behold, he got activated, and he talked about the rehab process after the game and how was a 6-month turnaround supposedly for him. He told himself he was going to get back in 3, and really, he went over all the things, how, essentially his agent, and I guess in so many words, his mother was saying, maybe you ought to think twice about maybe coming back. But he wanted to play. I mean, the guy's got such a love for football there, and that powered him to come back, and good for him. It was a statement on his part, and then we'll have to see what happens to him moving forward.
Right. He finishes the game 5 catches for 26 yards. So unfortunately, a stat line that looks all too similar to really what's happened to him since 2020. So, Dave, I don't know where you want to begin here recapping the loss. I think the first quarter game plan went about as well as expected. Scoreless after the first, Pittsburgh creating takeaways, end up getting a defensive touchdown to start things off in the second quarter. of the game, the TJ Watt scoop and score forced by Cam Hayward. So, I mean, you played the game, you kind of hoped you would play through the first 20 minutes or so. But of course, football is a 60-minute game, and to contain KC for a full 60 minutes is a monumental task that Pittsburgh obviously could not and would not end up doing in this game. And really, to beat KC, your offense has to match some of those big plays, and Pittsburgh's offense, as it has been for too long now, is just simply incapable of creating and matching those big plays.
Look, 10-1 was the explosive play count in this one. And that's one of the stories of this game. Once the Chiefs started to get those explosive plays going, the Steelers didn't have anything to match on the other side. Now, early in the game there, I don't know about you, my eyebrows were raised a little bit there. They were able to stop the Chiefs on the first couple possessions there, and got a couple of turnovers to boot. And one of those turnovers end up in the end zone with TJ Watt on a 26-yard fumble return. I had my eyebrows raised there for a little bit. I mean, after all, they kept the Chiefs out of the end zone for the first 5 possessions that they had in total there. But man, once the Steelers just didn't have an answer for that offensively. They could not move the football. Conversely, when you look at the Steelers, first half possessions, they run 20 something plays in total in the first half on a total of I think 8 possessions, and of course the 8th one before halftime was just a kneel down there. But you're not going to beat that Chiefs team that way. You had the defense doing what they were supposed to do early there, and the opposite side of that you needed was this team to jump on the Chiefs and get some points on the board and put Patrick Mahomes pressing quite a bit, and they couldn't do that. And once the Chiefs started scoring, it was pretty much over at that point.
Right. There's probably about at least a half foot of snow out in Pittsburgh today, at least out in my front yard. And so the analogy is once that snowball gets rolling downhill, that is the Chiefs offense, they are almost impossible to stop. So after TJ Watt's touchdown, the Chiefs simply had 6 straight touchdown drives to take it from 7-0 Pittsburgh to 35-7 Kansas City. And that's what they can do in basically a quarter is what they did that in as well. So it's hard to wrap your mind around. And again, the way to beat the Chiefs, if you really want to be competitive, it's going to take an offense that can produce big plays and win shootouts and not low-scoring affairs. That's what the Bengals did, 34-31. That's what a team like the Bills will have to do, and that's why they have a chance to beat the Chiefs and why Pittsburgh's prospects were so low in this game. And so, you had to play good red zone football. Pittsburgh did not. The Chiefs were 4-4. You had to, I think, dominate the turnover battle. They did early. They did not ultimately finish that way. +1, 2 turnovers for KC, 1 for Pittsburgh. Najee Harris's first fumble of the year. And so in those key metrics, Pittsburgh did not step up for the entire game.
Yeah, you look at the Tox number alone, right? 10-1 in the explosive plays. That's a differential of 9 there. I don't think you technically, if you had a few more turnovers, I think you could have gotten away with maybe being a -2 in that situation there. But when the turnovers, what were they, 2-1? I think in total there. That obviously isn't going to cut it. So it ended up being, 3-10 in the Tox battle. And not too many teams in the playoffs on the road are going to come away with victories being -7 in the Tox.
Right. Yeah, very hard to do given the circumstances. And so let's kind of just try to compartmentalize, though, and start with the Steelers defense. Again, a really strong start. You came out really hot on 3rd down, Trey Norwood, a couple of big 3rd down breakups that forced Chiefs punts, and even after the long punt return that Pittsburgh gave up, you go out there, TJ Watt tips, Mahomes pass, and Devin Bush picks it off. And, I mean, you really couldn't ask for a better start. And that was the game plan. Keep the score down in the first half and hope the Steelers offense can figure things out in the second half. That has been the MO for better or for worse all season long. And through 15 minutes of play and really 20 minutes of play, Pittsburgh's defense had accomplished that. And so it was a really strong start. And I don't want to forget that part because how bad things were in Week 16. KC races out to a 14-0 lead. That game was non-competitive basically from kickoff. In this game, it was competitive for at least a little while.
Well, like I said, my eyebrows were raised.
Yeah.
I went downstairs and go get a beverage on one of those. I think the end of the break of the first quarter there. I told my wife I kind of raised my eyebrows. I said, you ain't gonna believe this, but they're kind of holding their own. They're doing some of these things that we talked about they needed to do. Now, obviously, the offense hadn't done anything yet, but we knew that they were going to have a couple takeaways in this game, probably a defensive score, maybe a couple trick plays or two. But once it got, it is quite amazing that it was 7-0 until like 5:45 left in the first half there. And I kept thinking to myself, man, can they just get this thing to the fourth quarter? Because I think that was the long game in this one. Get it to the fourth quarter with about 7 minutes left, make it about a one possession game, even if you trail, and then you're going to give yourself a chance. But man, they just rapid fired.
Yeah.
And the straw that broke the camel's back there was right before halftime there when they what they have
3rd and 20.
What was the length of that possession time? 39-second drive, I think, for them. A 6-play 80-yard drive that they had, that they buried in the end zone to get it to 21-7. At that point right there, you're thinking, oof,
Yeah, that was a dagger for sure. And so you're right. With 6 minutes left in the second quarter, Pittsburgh was up 7-0. 6 minutes later, they were down 21-7. That sums up what it's like to play the Kansas City Chiefs. They can just hit you so quickly. And they hit McKinnon on that underhanded play that they've run before, that they run so uniquely and so well. Pringle beats Hayden on a sluggo double move with the Mahomes pump fake, and then the 3rd and 20 touchdown to Kelsey that was the dagger in that one, with the Chiefs getting the ball at halftime and I believe scoring on their first possession out of the break as well. And so that's what makes them tough to play. That's why you got to score points. Keeping the score down is one thing. It was the start, but it was not the answer to how you win that game. It was A, keep the score down early, and then B, have your offense pick things up in the second half. And obviously, by halftime, Pittsburgh's defense was eventually unable to keep the score down.
Yeah, look, and they couldn't get off the field on third down. That was obviously huge. And you had, I think, Mike Tomlin and Watt and Hayward after the game talking about that as well too there. So it snowballed on them. I mean, they did some of the things that they needed to do early in the game there. Man, that stop by Minka on the third down, kind of early in that game. There, and then obviously you get the turnover, and not only do you get the turnover, you cash it in, but it just snowballed on them in a second. Look, offensively, this got to a point in the game where it was the same old stuff that we've seen all season.
Yeah, I'm just looking at the stats here. The Chiefs had 3 failed down third down conversions in the first quarter. Then they had just 1 the rest of the game. And they finished the game 8-12 on third down. So you got third down stops early. You keep them off the board. You don't get third down stops the rest of the game, and the Chiefs become the Chiefs again. So there's a pretty clear correlation between the situational football that we harped on being so key. Again, red zone play, trying to force KC to settle for field goals. That did not happen 4-4. And then they were just, the article I wrote this morning, Dave, was saying the Chiefs were the Harlem Globetrotters. They were just out there just putting on a show and just making the Steelers look silly. The Steelers with the Washington General was just kind of trying to play conventional straight up football and just watching it all happen around them. So you got the underhanded touchdown to McKinnon. You got touchdowns to Lyman. You got Travis Kelce throwing touchdowns. It was just kind of I don't want to say it was an FU to Pittsburgh because that's a Chiefs game and that's all well and good, but it was just look at what we can do and you can't stop us kind of deal.
Look, it's none of my business, but I don't know why you put some of that stuff on tape. I guess because you can. Maybe it's just my jealousy coming through there. Some of those trick plays, I don't know if you don't save those for later, But he did say, I think that the after the game that Patrick Mahomes said to throw to the lineman there was like the fourth read. And I don't know if that's a dunk on the Steelers themselves to say that I had time to go through go to my fourth option on the play, which was a lineman on that one. But yeah, look, it's a very creative offense for sure. And You saw the effect of them having both Kelsey or having Kelsey back that they didn't have in that game previously there, and you saw the explosiveness of Tyreek Hill and how you can't let that guy get over the top of you. And man, they just roll out a third. Or what's McKinnon, former fourth round running back. I mean, a guy that you went into this game thinking, okay, they're not going to have Clyde Edwards-Helaire. He's obviously ruled out. And then Darrell Williams was questionable but active, I think, with a toe injury. But they bypassed all that and tried out McKinnon against the Steelers and still used him very effectively, not only as a running back but a pass catcher out of the backfield.
Yeah, 81 yards through the air and a touchdown for McKinnon and 61 yards on the ground. And he's always been a talented back. He had some real bad knee injuries, I think, with the 49ers a couple of years back, but he's always been an explosive guy that just needed to find good health again. He was a big-time star in college at Georgia Southern, running that option offense down there. I think a little bit of quarterback as well or something like that. And so kind of really fits in well with what the Chiefs like to do.
Yeah, once again, it's, other than – I guess it's being fun to see once you're, see how other offenses can be. I don't know why you show some of that stuff on tape, but
well, I think they probably can build off of that in 14 different ways. They'll force you to prepare for it defensively to maybe see a one-off play you may or may not see. So I think it's actually a pretty smart move.
Okay, all right. Well, they put them in the end zone. That's the goal of the game.
For sure. So, again, the cornerback play in this one, Norwood was good early, but, that faded pretty quickly. The cornerbacks had their issues. I don't know if, Sutton was horrible, but, he got beat deep once. Hayden had issues deep. There's just so much speed, so much talent on the outside for the Chiefs, whether that's Hill or Hardman and obviously Travis Kelce. It's just tough to stop, start to finish. You can minimize those things for a time and for a quarter, as Pittsburgh did, but doing that for an entire game, there are very few teams that can do that, especially when the Chiefs aren't beating themselves with turnovers and tip passes and unforced errors.
And Mike Tomlin summed up: you got to be able to score. I mean, you're not going to hold this. You're not going to hold a team like that down. Nope. You got to basically do what the Bengals did with them, right? Mm-hmm. And match them and put them into certain positions, and then obviously get off the field on third down situations. I mean, they're obviously on offense. They're built pretty solidly. This is a team that just a couple of I think even going into the offseason, you kind of wonder what's going to happen with that offensive line there. But that goes to show you how quickly you can put together. Remember the old talk? It was there goes Eric Fisher out the door or injured or whatnot. And wasn't it last year during the playoffs that they had Wisniewski on the line and I mean they were a mess on that offensive line. It just goes to show you how quickly you can put that stuff together, even with a couple of rookies on that offensive line, and boom, they're right back in this thing because they already had the skill position players in Tyreek Hill and Travis Kelce and nice stable running backs over there that they're able to rotate through on top of it. It goes without saying they got a quarterback that even it felt like it didn't matter, right? You rush four, if you rush four against him, then he has time most of the time to sit back there and pick you apart. You blitz him, he gets the ball out quick. You kind of delay on him a little bit, he escapes the pocket and makes an extended play. And that's what having a franchise quarterback that can move and has the has the weapons to throw to down the field on. I mean, that's the byproduct of that. That's the thing that made Ben Roethlisberger and the Steelers offense so great for all those years, right? Was Ben be able to extend the play and be able to throw to guys like Mike Wallace and Antonio Brown and Le'Veon Bell out of the backfield, those kind of things. That's obviously what the Steelers are missing at this point. You cannot just run 28 or however many plays in the first half. What they have first downs at halftime or third down. They had two first downs and like one third down conversion, right?
It was 2 first downs. I think that they started the game 1 of 8 on third down. They finished it better looking because they racked up some stats in garbage time. But 2 first downs in the first half and a 1 and 8 on third down to begin the game. I mean, that's just you're not going to win. Yeah, that's blouses.
Yeah, you're not going to win a game like that at all.
Yeah.
And you didn't have. When did your first explosive play come, or your only explosive play?
Yeah, first and last. Washington, late third quarter, maybe at left sideline. I think it was
451. 451 in the third quarter. So, and then the running game was non-existent. I mean, outside of maybe an 8-yard run, I think early off of right tackle there by Najee Harris, and he obviously wasn't 100% in this game either. And it got to the point where he couldn't hold on to the football, I guess. And, they 390 touches later, they decided, maybe we should start getting him a little bit rested here. So out he came, and it didn't matter at that point. As you mentioned, they were able to move the football late, but it was once again a repeat of what had happened back in week 16, where they said, just don't beat us up over the top here. Take everything that you want underneath there and run some clock time so we can get out of here.
Right. And to the point about Mahomes, because the book on him is rush 4, drop 7, but it is hard to contain with just 4. And he can run around, and yes, you have to plaster defensively, and Pittsburgh did that well in that first quarter. But again, the theme is to do that for an entire game is a different story. And so on some of those big plays they had, second, third quarter, it was just, Mahomes being able to break contain or have time, and eventually someone's going to get open because there is just so much talent. Pittsburgh played a lot of zone, which I understood, but it is a lot of that spot drop zone where they're not really carrying and matching routes as they get distributed. And so that's how a Travis Kelce gets open, because they're not matching that. And Casey's able to kind of scheme and scramble drill their way into getting guys like him pretty open.
Right. It doesn't help offensively when you have a couple of drops on top of it. Boy, that early kind of 3rd and 2 quick slant to Deontay Johnson for a drop. If you're going to try to run with a team like that, you got to be able to convert those. And that was just a huge drop. Boy, JuJu's reaction after that one as well, too.
Mm-hmm.
And I think JuJu was kind of it's not an official stat, but I think you could probably charge him with a drop later on in the game. It looks like they have, according to PFF, they gave the team 3 drops there with 2 to Deontay there. I thought Chase Claypool probably could have fought harder for one of those balls.
Heard that one before.
Yeah, we've heard that one before. And Mike Tomlin's response after the game kind of summed it up, if you will. Talk about could your receivers probably helped out by making a few more plays, especially in the first half of that game. Mike Tomlin says, "You think?" Yeah. Look, Deontay's a phenomenal route runner, separator, after the catch guy, and it looked like at early on in the season he'd kind of put those drops behind him there. But these last 3 weeks, 4 weeks, or whatever, those things have kind of resurfaced there. And we talked about what kind of money is this guy going to kind of want? What can you give him? It's really hard to give a guy that top 10, top 12 wide receiver money with this drop issue that he has.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. I don't want to let the last 4 weeks or so make us forget how good everything was until that, but the wheels have come off at the end. And I mentioned this a couple weeks ago, and maybe it's coincidence, maybe it's not, but he certainly seemed a bit upset that he was snubbed from the Pro Bowl. He was excluded from the Pro Bowl. And ever since then, his play has started to drop off. So I don't know if that means anything or not. But I do see a connection there. And so his goal next year obviously will be to finish, tape to tape from beginning to end, because he did not end the year nearly the way he began it.
He's obviously the most talented wide receiver this team has, right now. And, I don't want to take anything away from JuJu. JuJu is obviously a great wide receiver, especially on third down, yards after the catch. But we haven't seen, where is the ceiling on JuJu that we don't know maybe whether or not exists yet because of not being used down the field much.
Mm-hmm.
You know what I'm saying?
No, I do. Yeah. I mean, you're going to pay a guy to catch, 8.5 yards per catch, 9 yards per catch. I mean, that's not probably going to be a good ROI. But I haven't thought about those things too much, just because I was just happy to see him back yesterday. I thought it was a really cool moment, and kudos to him for working so hard and all those late nights, early mornings to rehab and just be available, get medically cleared, and just processing the loss. So I haven't thought about, the value aspect of his offseason prospects too much yet.
I mean, we know what he offers this team on third down and after the catch and sport, especially in the short game type aspect. But do we really know in all the time that JuJu's been with this team what the ceiling is on him? I mean, we got a fairly good idea, but I mean, it's not his fault though that he hasn't been used. More and more these slot fades and middle of the field type situations, seam type stuff, more opportunities to catch the football more than 7 yards past the line of scrimmage.
Right. We know he's capable of that. I mean, this guy's got a pair of 97-yard touchdowns under his belt. So it's just a matter of usage and scheme. That I think would need to change to be able to justify an investment in him, as I said, this past offseason. But I think he's certainly capable of that.
And we know what kind of blocker he is, and we obviously know what kind of heart he has. And I mean, he's a good kid. I mean, no way around. The guy just loves football, and I think that was apparent by him working himself back so quickly from that shoulder injury that he had back in week 5 there. But not enough. And look, you look at the other wide receivers. Ray has huge heart, a lot of moxie to him. Boy, he took another pop late in that game, and for a little guy, that he keeps bouncing up. But I mean, that's not a guy that you're going to build. That's not a guy that should be a large part of your offensive game plan.
Yeah, and just 14 snaps for him offensively last night with JuJu's return, which is kind of more where you would want it. But McLeod has definitely come up big this year, and you got to give him credit, I think, for a good season overall. Washington probably was your best receiver last night. A couple of great high point plays down the sideline, including one for a touchdown. So he put on some good tape to show the other 31 teams this offseason.
Boy, that guy can't wait to get out of town fast enough, can he?
He's already probably got his ticket today. He's probably back in Oklahoma on his farm right now.
Yeah, I bet that lease is going to be expiring pretty soon, because I bet nobody wants to get out of town quicker than him right now.
Yeah, I'm just looking at some of the stats here for Pittsburgh from a reception standpoint. It kind of sums up the very dink and dunk lack of vertical offense. Looks like, I think, 6 or something players caught at least 2 passes. Their leading receiver had 37 yards. 6 Chiefs had 37 or more yards alone. So, I mean, he just 37 yards, 34 yards, 33 yards, 26, 25, 25, 20. Those are the yardage numbers for the Steelers receiver. 16 for Benny Snell. They're very short, and that's been a problem this offense has had dating back to 2019, but really under Ben 2020 and his return from injury, and you just have not gotten the vertical component. It's been so much short stuff, and again, you're not beating the Chiefs with 5-yard dump offs when they're hitting you for 48-yard touchdowns.
He did hit 3 completions, I think, more than 15 yards past the line of scrimmage. 2 of those were I think both 2 of those were touchdowns. One to Washington, one to, I think, Deontay, and then had another one over there on the side to Washington that I think was also the longest catch of the game there. But everything else looks like 12-yard air distance or shorter when it came to completion. And once again, those late touchdowns count and all, and they make the passing chart look a lot better. But for the most of the game, this was, heck, I'm looking at it right now. I mean, you're talking a predominant amount of his completions were 6 yards or less, when it came to balls thrown past the line of scrimmage.
Which has been the story all year, especially the last couple of weeks. Even basically since the Browns game, it's been even somehow more of a reduction of an offense and a shorter pass game. And again, receivers did not play well. Johnson's got to be able to make plays. There was a lot of miscommunication last night. Johnson had one, and Frymuth had one on third down. So I probably put those issues a little less on Ben and more on receivers and communication and the difficulty of playing on the road and stuff like that. But regardless, the results are the results, and they're not results that are going to match up against a 2-seed, explosive offense. My joke last night was, KC brought a flamethrower to this game. Pittsburgh had a sparkler. I mean, and the sparkler might be too generous. I was trying to think of something less potent than that. And so you're just not going to win those games.
What did we say going into the season, Alex, about this team offensively? We said this team's got to be able to run the football. Just no two ways around it. For the Steelers to have a lot of success and on into the playoffs here, the team was going to have to run the football first and foremost, and they're going to have to obviously play good defense throughout this team. And not only could they not run the football effectively, they couldn't stop the run either there. And it is kind of amazing that some of these games didn't get further away from them than they did. And I guess that's kind of a testament to some of the red zone defense that we saw, which obviously they didn't have that red zone defense Sunday night in Kansas City there. But Ben Roethlisberger is what he's been for the last couple of years, and this offense, even though you've changed offensive coordinators, really the overall idea was to try to run the football, use the short passing game as a run game alternative, and the rest of it was throw short, try to run long, and then occasionally take your shots down outside the numbers and try to hit it for explosive plays. And one aspect that never improved that I didn't think would was the ability to connect down the field for this team that way. Ben just, for whatever reason, obviously wide receivers play a part in that as well too. They just weren't able to push the football down effectively down the field enough, and they could not run the football consistently enough. You would have liked to have seen this team get in situations where they ran the ball so damn good early that it impacted the passing game, and then not only that, they were able to run the football late to put away games. We never really saw that this year.
Yeah, I think the overall blueprint for this offense on paper, it certainly didn't work in practice, was run the ball effectively, force teams to play with 8-man boxes, rotate the safety down, and then win those one-on-one matchups vertically on the sideline, the cover one, isolated coverage, jump ball kind of situations. And neither of those things, the run game nor the jump ball plays, happen frequently enough this year. And so that's been the blueprint, and it's been a failure of execution for 2 seasons now, at least.
Right. I mean, look, until this team can prove that they have a vertical passing attack, what are teams going to do?
They're going to keep playing too high, and if they can't run the ball, then that kind of allows teams to play too high. It's becoming a too high world in the NFL anyway, and so you better run the ball effectively. In Pittsburgh, you have to show they can do that on a consistent basis.
Yeah, they can't even run against these light boxes, and until any of that changes. Look, how much, obviously the big topic going into this offseason will be, got to fire Matt Canada, got to do something with the OC. I'm not really sure we know what Matt Canada is and isn't in totality. I don't know how much the play of the quarterback maybe hampers what he would like to kind of do. But in the same instance, as we've talked about several times, good offensive coordinators can adjust to the personnel outside of making, all of them speak that all the time. No, they all say, well, look, my job is to take the personnel and build an offense about it. But the root of it is a lot of them probably have ideas that they wish they could do more of this in their system. If they don't have that certain aspect of maybe a mobile quarterback or anything along those, something along those lines, it does end up hampering things now. And that's obviously going to be the big talk, is what is the ceiling for a Matt Canada offense? And, with obviously a new quarterback coming in, whether it be one already on your roster or one from the outside or a rookie, the offensive coordinator will obviously be a big part of that moving forward there. So it will be look, I mean, I don't know which way it's going to go. I mean, you could obviously make good arguments that that Matt Canada's not going to be back for whatever reason. Either he's not wanted back, he don't want to be back. He's
not one to stay in one place too long over his football history, anyway.
Right, but I wouldn't be totally shocked if they gave him another season, to be honest with you.
Yeah, I think that possibility is still open. Certainly, he could be one and done, and I would not be absolutely floored by it by any means. But it would
The
be
fan base wouldn't like it, but I
no,
mean,
yeah, they want him fired today, and I get the instinct there. It wasn't a good year for the offense. Obviously, there's a very big buck statement I just made there.
what would you have done different offensively?
Yeah, that's what I kind of come back to. I'm just trying to articulate what would be the primary reasons to fire Canada. And it's not like there's not any, but you're just trying to find some overall, ideas of why it didn't work and why Canada is like clearly responsible for that in a year where your quarterback was not very good, your offensive line was totally, brand new, growing pains, all those kinds of things. There were so many new and moving pieces that do you feel like you have a great evaluation of Canada as an OC? I mean, of course you can still evaluate him, but would you want to give that another year as guys start to grow and roles become more established and that newness kind of wears off from where it was coming into this past off season? I think there's a case to be made for that, but I'll have to kind of sit on it and think about it some more. But obviously, I'm not trying to defend the results because the results were a mess. It's just a question of how much of that is coaching, how much is that is players, and those kinds of things.
I mean, what we saw all season, we saw all season. I mean, in so many words, right? I mean,
yeah.
Was there any aspect of what they did maybe on one week as opposed to another where you thought, oh, well, that's different,
There were moments. I mean, the route concepts to beat, I think the Titans or the Browns, but those things obviously didn't come consistently enough.
I mean, and by different, I don't mean working Derek Watt out of the number 2.
Mm-hmm. Hey, you wanted to throw the wheel to him. They threw the out.
Well, I mean, I thought maybe they would use that to try to set up maybe an out and up after that, but never got back around to that, I guess, there, But I wouldn't have minded some sort of play action with maybe Watt out of the backfield on a wheel route or something, not out of the 2 where you have an empty backfield and you're inviting them to come right up the gut on you.
Right. Play action gets tough, though, when you're down 28-7 at the drop of a hat, but I get your point. All right, Dave. Any other thoughts here offensively from this game? Special teams,
just ugly. Just ugly. They couldn't run the football. The offensive line, not great in that aspect. And then once again, you don't convert those early third downs. You have the drops to come along with it. You have 5 possessions where you've run whatever amount of plays that they ran, and you only had 1 first down or one third down conversion at the half, 2 first downs in total there. And then you're staring down 21-7, and plus you got to kick the football off to them at that point.
Mm-hmm.
They're at that point, there was not going to be a Minnesota situation or, one of these other various things where Bids was ever going to be able to overcome that because they just could not get into a firepower race with the Chiefs.
Yeah, the last depressing first half stat I'll give you, then I promise I'll hopefully stop. That at halftime the Chiefs had run more plays, 49, than Pittsburgh had yards, 44. So when the other team is running more plays and you have yards, don't think that's good. I'm going to go on a limb and say that's a bad thing to do as a team. Special teams, what's that?
Well, plus I think the Steelers were averaging less than 2 yards per play.
Yeah, 1.7, I believe. And again, okay, one more bad first half stat. Pittsburgh did not score a touchdown in the first quarter of their last 9 games. They scored 9 points in the first quarter of their last 9 games. 1 point in the first quarter on average is not winning football.
Yeah, I will extrapolate that. I will take your stat and make it look even worse here for you overall. How many possessions did they have in the first half?
I don't know.
Total, even including the kneel down. Hold on, let me get back over here to the possession chart here. 4 and 8. So what did they have? 43. So 51 possessions over their last 8 games, 1 touchdown in the first half, 51 first half possessions, and one touchdown out of all that. I mean,
the first half.
In the first half, yeah.
Wow. Yeah. I mean, it's a miracle they got this far.
Yep, absolutely.
Special teams, at least. Well, Harvin punted well. So the team, by the way, and the corresponding moves they made, I should have recapped that. James Pierre went on the COVID list to replace to take the spot for James Washington took James Pierre's spot because Pierre went on COVID, and then punter Corliss Waitman was released to make room for JuJu Smith-Schuster on Saturday. So Presley Harvin became the punter and punted well, I thought. So kudos to him for at least finishing a difficult rookie season, both on and off the field. On a high note, but special teams overall, not creating splash there. The net average was poor. The return units or the coverage units were poor. First return, 21 yards. Second one, 48 yards that nearly got in the end zone, only saved by the Watt tip Bush interception. The following play, you created no splash on special teams otherwise. And so Mike Tomlin made it very clear about how potent the KC's specialist units are, and they proved that on Sunday night.
Think about that for a minute. 8 games. 8 games, one offensive possession in 8 games ended up in a touchdown.
Yeah, I mean, has that been done before? Probably, but not often. It's not good company. I'm sure you want to keep whoever's sitting with you.
I mean, maybe that's happened for a team over a season to have 8 games like that, but consecutive. Wow. I mean, that's ineptitude right there offensively, period. You would think you would luck yourself into a deep downfield pass interference, getting the red zone, blown coverage, something,
and what was the touchdown? Was that against the Browns?
That was against the Browns, right.
And that was, I don't even know who scored that. You think I would remember, but it's all kind of running together at this point for me. Who had the touchdown?
Let me pull that back up here. What week would that have been? In week 17, right? That would be.
Did Najee have the dive or no?
Deontay Johnson, 5-yard pass from Ben Roethlisberger in the second quarter, 10:39.
Yeah, so that's it. That's an incredible stat. Kudos to you for a very depressing stat of the weird there, Dave.
Yeah, I mean, look, that'll be more ammunition against a guy like Matt Canada for sure. In that aspect there. And look, it's more than just offense. It's more than just a quarterback position right now on top of it. So just don't think that you're going to throw in another quarterback here and move on. They got a lot of fixing to do.
They do. There's a lot. It's a very monumental offseason. That's the subject of my terrible take today about the weight of this offseason from so many different angles. But just to kind of wrap up the game last night.
Defensively, what'd you think?
Yeah, it is hard to be overly critical of this defense because, at least they kept this thing fun to watch for 20 minutes of the game. And the Chiefs are so good and your offense does nothing and time of possession was an issue in the first half and those kinds of things. But we're talking about another game where Pittsburgh allows a bunch of points defensively. And so the stat is they've allowed 35-plus points now in their last 4 playoff games. That is an NFL record. They've allowed 42-plus points in the playoffs in 3 straight games. That is also an NFL record. So, it has been every single postseason game talking about blowout losses or at least games where the defense allows way too many points. And again, last night's probably the most quote-unquote acceptable of that, just given the Chiefs' offense and given the Steelers' offensive issues and Pittsburgh at least keeping things close and scoring a defensive touchdown. So again, it's hard to be overly critical, but just big picture, stepping back for a second, you're just kind of repeating the same story year after year every time you at least get a chance at postseason play.
Well, you even go back to ahead of that Jaguars playoff game, go back to the Patriots game, ahead of that, and this takes you all the way back to, I guess, their last playoff victory, which was against the Chiefs in January of 2017. The game after that, obviously, they got beat by the Patriots, right? And they gave
the title game.
They gave up 36 points in that game. So it went 36, 45, 48, and 42 points allowed by the defense in their last 4 playoff games that they played in. You're not going to win games, like that. And look, the highlights to what Keith Butler will probably be known for is the fact that he can kind of scheme up pressures and sacks, if you will. But beyond that, they got to do a better job on the back end of these things when they don't get those sacks.
Yeah, they just have to get stops. That's better red zone plays, better situational ball. Like you knew, and I said this Friday, you knew the Chiefs are going to move the football. They're just too dang good, and they're in their own home, place. They're at Arrowhead. Like they're going to move the football, but can you get some of those situational stops? They did early, and that's why the score was 0-0 after 15 minutes of play. But they couldn't do it throughout the game. And again, it is to an extent hard to blame them. But the bottom line is they have to get some of those situational stops. And when you're 4-4 in the red zone, you're allowing 3rd and 20 touchdowns. Those are things in Pittsburgh's control. They can make those stops, and they ultimately did not, and that's why this game got away from them.
Yep. And look, had some blown coverages in there, and and you don't have inside linebackers that can cover. It got away from them easily.
So after the game, obviously there was a big component about the game itself, but then it did shift, and every end of season's emotional and tough to watch, and those guys certainly feel it. But last night I think was different because of the way the season went, and of course this being Ben's last game, and I'm sure there'll be a retirement press conference coming up in the next week or two or so for Ben. But you had Mike Tomlin talk about just very briefly, and he hasn't talked much about what's Ben has meant to him. He's kind of deflected and said there'll be a time to talk about those things. He just briefly touched on last night. It was an honor and a pleasure is what he said about working with Ben speaking about kind of moving on with his life's work, and a very emotional Cam Hayward talking about Ben, talking about Stephon Tuitt, Tyson Alualu, his brothers, as he said. So, last night was emotional, more emotional than usual, just given the circumstances and what lies ahead for this team.
Yeah, how much different would this defense have been had they had Tuitt and Alualu? Obviously, you wouldn't think that you'd get beat against the run, or had the play against the run that you had. That obviously were losing both those players was huge. But man, they didn't have any linebacker play. When you have a guy like Minka Fitzpatrick having to make the amount of tackles that he had in that secondary, that hurts. And look, the finality of this every year is, oh man, this team's going to look a lot different next season, and it should.
Mm-hmm.
You're going to lose the bottom third at a minimum of the team, and you look around and see some of these teams, how they've been able to overcome injuries, and part of you wants to make a huge excuse to say, yeah, but they lost Tuitt, they lost Alualu. But, shouldn't your depth kind of be good enough to help at least not have some of the deficiencies against the run that this team had,
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I understand the injuries played a role, and that significantly impacted your defense, and to expect them to play as well as they did in 19 and 20 is unreasonable, but that does not excuse being a 32nd ranked run defense, a historically bad run defense in Steelers history, and those kinds of things. But yeah, to your point, we're used to the bottom of the roster churning as it naturally does, but now the top of the roster, now the top of the organization is going to churn with your quarterback, with likely your GM. And so, again, my table take today is on kind of the weight of this offseason, and what they do over these next 4 months will start to write that new chapter of what the next 5 years in Pittsburgh is going to look like. And those are big decisions this team has not had to make since really like 07, 04, and 2000.
Yeah, look, I mean, you got a lot of decisions coming up, this offseason. I mean, huge. This is a huge shift in the organization right now from several angles.
Yeah, and so we'll obviously be taking it all in and recapping. We don't need to make decisions and have all the answers today, but we'll begin with an eye towards some of those things. Again, we'll be at the Senior Bowl. Myself, some other guys will be at the Senior Bowl. We'll have a crew at the Shrine Game as well. And so, the season is over for Pittsburgh on the field, but their offseason just beginning, and so is ours, Dave.
Yeah, and we got to watch this thing about 2 or 3 more times still.
Yeah, we'll go back through it and see what we can see, and one last ride this year. So any other final thoughts here, things I missed? I'm sure there are some small things I'm missing here, but any thoughts, Dave?
Just it was a culmination of what we saw all season. So I don't think either one of us were hugely surprised. I kind of thought maybe they'd make more of a game out of it yesterday than they actually did. I thought it'd be closer. I obviously still thought they weren't going to come out of Kansas City with a win. I just was expecting a little bit better performance than what we got overall.
Yeah, you saw the blueprint for 20 minutes, like I said. And, kudos to the defensive stars for Pittsburgh, Watt and Hayward and Minka. Those guys have been a joy to watch all season. And now you just hope for Watt to get the hardware. Now that the games don't matter, you hope for some awards. And I think Watt will and certainly should be Defensive Player of the Year.
Look, I mean, he made 2 plays early on in that game that gave you any sort of hope, I think, as a fan. Being able to tip that pass that got intercepted, and then obviously he didn't force the fumble. Cam Hayward. Look, you've got 3 guys still on that defensive side of football that you can build around. And who knows how much Cameron Hayward has left, but at no point during this season did I think, well, you know what, Cameron Hayward's kind of getting long in the tooth. There. I mean, you can make an argument probably his best season to date. Yeah. And you go back the last couple of seasons, and he's had some damn good seasons there. So you have him. You saw a different kind of, unfortunate kind of aspect of Minka Fitzpatrick's game, Minka's game that you didn't really want to see, and that's him having to make tackles 10 yards, 12 yards, 18 yards down the field. But at least that Minka can be an even more complete safety. No, he didn't have the kind of takeaways or any of those things, but he made a lot of key stops along the way that probably could have ended up in the end zone there. So you got 3 core players for sure to build around. And make no mistake about it, until this organization can build this defense back up to where it's one of the top ones in the league, where they can run with a team like Kansas City or Buffalo that are so explosive that seem like they can put up the 35 points every game. And until they can do that, then I don't care what you do at quarterback, to be honest with you.
Yeah, not to get in the offseason talk, but that's going to be the goal, because Mahomes isn't going anywhere. Josh Allen isn't going anywhere. Joe Burrow is not going anywhere. You're going to see him twice a year. Like, you want your defense to play well and be able to create turnovers and stuff like that, but you got to create an offense here that can run with those big boys. Otherwise, you're never going to get the results that you ultimately want.
Right, but to me, I will never not believe that defense ultimately is what wins you championships. Even in today's NFL, you're obviously going to have offense to be complementary to a defense there. But I think you'll see at some point during these playoffs once again the role that being able to stop the pass plays in keeping some of these more explosive teams bottled up there. So this defense, even though they got the adjusted net yards per passing attempt number down to under 6 there, which was an acceptable level, it was kind of a smoke and mirrors kind of number there, especially when you look at giving up the amount of yards on the ground. Teams didn't have to pass successfully all the time against the Steelers defense this year, but until they get this defense back and be more just than a sack machine, then they're not going to be able to compete for a championship.
Yeah, I get that. I think defensively, the focus has to be on creating chaos and turnovers, and you get a couple possessions you steal against those top echelon offenses. But until you have a quarterback that can match those names that just rattled off and others, I think it's really hard to compete consistently, because you might be a good team, you might hang around, you're going to be in the hunt with a good defense and a average quarterback play and some good fundamental football, but you're going to need the highs to compete with some of those really high level guys if you want to win consistently. And so that's where I kind of put the focus at. It's hard to do, obviously, to find that guy, but I think that's a must.
It's still early in his career, but what are your thoughts right now as we go further into the playoffs on Joe Burrow?
I mean, this guy's going to be a stud for 10, 15 years. I mean, this is going to be like the way that the Browns and the Bengals felt facing Ben in 04 and 07, 09, those kinds of things, where it's like you got to see this guy twice a year and you got to find a way to deal with that. So Burrow to Chase is going to be a matchup to worry about when we're talking here in 2030.
On a scale of 1 to 10, with 10 being Lamar Jackson, how would you rate Joe Burrow's mobility?
Yeah, so the question you had on Twitter, I don't have a great scale. I know you're giving me the top end there with Lamar, probably like a 6 for Burrow.
Okay, I mean that's average, right?
I mean, I guess it's above average if it's a 6 on a 1 to 10 scale.
I mean, for all practical purposes, is slightly above average then. I mean, not phenomenal, right? I mean, but when you think, where would you rate Mahomes on that scale?
Probably in that Burrow camp, probably in that 6-ish kind of
Really?
range.
I mean, Mahomes is more mobile than Burrow, right?
He's able to do some of the more wacky stuff, and they're both guys that try to run the throw. Generally speaking, they certainly can run. I don't know. I mean, it's just a random scale. I'm just trying to think about how to, maybe 7.
Where do both of them rank on maybe in an extended play aspect?
I mean, they're highly. Mahomes is like a 43. I mean, he's ridiculous, off the chart for what he's able to do, just because he can throw from any platform while he's scrambling. So it's not like moving to his left and you take away half the field. The field is always wide open for him. Burrow is not at that level. He's up there. I don't know how to rank that, but those guys are able to scramble to extend the play to throw, and certainly they can run, but they're not going to have the jukes and the make you miss kind of plays that a Murray or a Lamar is going to have, and they're not as big and physical as a Josh Allen is.
Well, here's the thing. You need a quarterback that can go off of script.
Yeah, I tweeted last night, you want a quarterback with a big arm, ability to go off script. And that feels a little like kid playing Madden-ish, so I want to maybe restrain that a little bit. But yeah, you need someone that can make some big plays, bring some juice and life to this offense.
All right. I still think, though, the defense, they're not going to do anything until they get this defense back.
Do you think you could win the AFC consistently with a good defense and an average quarterback?
I think so, if you have the running game and all going along with it. I think you can. You got to be able to shut down. When you get into these games, look, this team made the playoffs this year, right? I mean, call it what you will, smoke and mirrors, which it was. They made the playoffs, right? But if you're going to take that next step, you're going to have to be able to limit some of the scoring against you.
Yeah, I get
and
that.
The offense obviously has got to be better than it's got to be 4 times better than what it's been this year. But I really think, look, they don't have you don't even know who the quarterback's going to be right now, and none of the quote unquote experts knows who's going to be the quarterback right now either. 2 weeks ago, you had Ian Rappaport saying this team was looking at adding a veteran free agent quarterback. Now, 2 weeks later, his report is this team's very serious looking into Kenny Pickett and has no interest in a free agent quarterback. I mean, no, they don't know. No, the Steelers probably don't even completely know at this point here. This thing could go 18 different directions right now, and. But yeah, I mean, look, you're not going. It goes without saying, you're not going to win a Super Bowl without a franchise quarterback. But who are the franchise quarterbacks in today's NFL post Tom Brady? And when is post Tom Brady ever going to be? Josh Allen's obviously one of those guys. Patrick Mahomes is obviously one of those guys. Who else is on that list?
Yeah, Joe Burrow, if you just go in AFC, Joe Burrow is one of those guys. Those are like the top quarterbacks in your conference right now.
Okay. Anyway, this team is not close to competing for a Super Bowl. Let's leave it at that.
Yeah, I think that much is obvious, and this offseason, again, will be big in shaping how quickly they can get back to being close to competing again. And depending on the moves.
What's got you most disappointed about going into this offseason? Of what expectations versus, everything? What's got you most disappointed?
I don't know if there's something that has me truly disappointed. I just think there's that nervous excitement of this is uncharted territory for this team. They've had the same GM since 2000, the same quarterback since 2004. There's a lot of newness there, and there's always hard decisions to make in every offseason, this offseason for sure, with all the cost cutting and stuff like that with the cap, but not like the monumental decisions that pass or fail your franchise for the next 2 to 3 years, like finding a GM and the decisions he makes and a quarterback and things like that. So you got to get those things right, and hopefully they will, but there's no guarantee.
What has been the biggest thing that has not allowed this team to win a playoff game since January of 2017?
I mean, if you're looking at since 2017 in totality, I mean, you've allowed 35 plus points in all four of those games, and you're not going to win many games when you're doing that. So there are different exceptions, and what happened yesterday is different than what happened in the Jags game versus the Browns game, et cetera, et cetera. But I mean, you can't allow 35 plus points in these playoff games and expect to win.
Okay, so that goes back to my defense kind of statement there. So, all right, where to?
I think we should probably, before we get to read emails, just a couple last things. Obviously, Ben, spoke last night and was emotional and will have his retirement presser, sometime in the near future. But Joe Hayden, another guy that maybe may have just played his last game in Pittsburgh as well, did not speak with the media, but had a tweet last night just thanking Steelers Nation, said, we'll see what the future holds. So obviously, Dave, there's a lot of time to go through the long list of guys who are set to be free agents and stuff like that. But did want to mention Joe Hayden as a guy that may have played his last down in Pittsburgh.
Yeah, you can't bring them all back, right? I mean, Joe Hayden, a heck of a human being. To hear Cameron Hayward talk about kind of a lot of the intangibles, what Joe Hayden brings and impact of making sure new guys are brought along. I mean, Joe Hayden, it's too bad that Joe Hayden wasn't a Steeler his whole entire career, right? For sure. But there comes a point where you got to make some tough decisions, and he is going to be one of those tough decisions. For the right price, maybe you bring him back, but that right price is probably not going to be near his right price, if you know what I'm saying there. He is, just age alone and how he's likely to miss games moving forward. It probably not a great investment to sink a lot of money into. Those intangibles only carry you so far for a price tag. So from where I sit now, I'm not expecting him back. But, once again, stranger things have happened there. But it has been fun watching him play the last several years with the Steelers.
Yeah, I'm in the same camp as you, Dave. We'll see. My guess is that he won't be back, but I'm not going to close that door entirely on the odds of him actually returning. You just kind of feel for the guy. I mean, he's had a long, really great career, but has only played in 2 playoff games and is 0-2 in those games. And he came to Pittsburgh to win in the postseason because he was with the Browns and they were horrible, never even had a chance to sniff at postseason play. And he comes to Pittsburgh and, similar results happen where you just can't even get one playoff victory in your career.
And he couldn't even play in that game last year due to COVID.
Right. Yeah. So it's been tough for sure. So again, a lot of time here to talk about offseason, and we got nothing but time nowadays. But for now, let's get to some reader emails and close out today's show.
Yeah, let me try to sort these. Make sure I get kind of towards the back end of this because we got so many of these things in here. We will start with looks like Troy writes in, David Knox, with Deontay's drops and James Washington's emergent during this game, what do the Steelers do at wide receiver? Claypool still missing opportunities by not catching catchable balls, and Deontay deciding to have drops in the most important game of the season. Did the Steelers exercise Deontay's fifth-year option? Do we keep James Washington? Do we trade Claypool? I am sensing a wide receiver being drafted in the first round. Want to know your thoughts. First of all, Troy, there is no fifth-year option attached to Deontay. Fifth-year options only go to first-round players. So that's not part of the equation here. The big question with Deontay is what do you do during the offseason with him? He's obviously going to be on this team in 2022. It's just, will you make him play out the year? Look, he hit a proven performance escalator in 2021 due to play time and all like that. So he's going to get a nice little bump in pay in 2022. We'll have more on that in some post and podcast later there. But the big question is do you want to hook your wagon up to him? And what's it going to take? Where's the meat in the middle part with him? Extremely talented player. It's just the drops, that have you. I mean, there is no if about the drops are the biggest thing that you worry about when it comes to a guy like him. James Washington. I was a huge James Washington fan coming out of Oklahoma State. If only James Washington had 4.44 speed. He just never is going to be that guy that's going to scare players to take the top off the coverage. But he's got those strong hands, and I don't know if the Steelers really knew how to really use him overall. He's going to, without a doubt, I think he's going to be gone. Do we trade Claypool? I would obviously entertain offers for it when the dust settles. Do I think they trade Claypool? No, I don't. The big question is JuJu? What's going to happen with JuJu? And I think that's the biggest question when it comes to your wide receiver group this offseason is what happens with JuJu. Now, when it comes to the draft, regardless, this team is going to draft a wide receiver. I'm not convinced it'll be a first-round guy, but we still got plenty of time to think about that. I do think that this team needs I've said it for a long time. They need a wide receiver to take top off the coverage, period. They need that Tyreek Hill kind of guy. You put the ball in his hands, and that guy 60 yards later is in the end zone.
Yeah, I agree with everything you said. We'll see on Deontay. Claypool, very likely to get traded. Washington's gone. JuJu, I'm really 50-50 on. I think philosophically, and I'm not saying this means you have to draft a receiver in the first round. There's talent, obviously on the team right now. But philosophically, this team has always been, you draft some more mid-round receivers because you had a Hall of Fame quarterback that made those receivers a little bit better. They probably accelerated their development and just made them look a bit better overall. Now, with him gone, with Ben gone, you kind of reverse that process where you got to find some really good receivers and have strong talent there to make that quarterback, whether that's a rookie or a middling veteran option, look better. And so I think he probably maybe put more emphasis on adding quality receivers a bit higher because you want to make your quarterback now look good.
What is Claypool for you now moving forward?
In terms of what his role is or
everything?
He's still going to be your Z receiver. Is he a good enough Z receiver is a very good question to ask right now. I do give him credit. I think he grew up some this last month and some of his on and off field actions and stuff like that. But does that make him a great player or a player he needs to be? No, not yet. So it's a very good question. I don't have great answers to right now, but the fact there are question marks probably is partially your answer about Claypool.
Well, plain and simple, whether it's a Z, look, you got Deontay and he's an X, right? Some people will probably say, well, Deontay should probably play in a slot. That's not what he is. You can make an argument that Claypool should become kind of a part-time, big time slot. But once again, he was drafted to be a Z. His problem is what I told everybody his problem is going to be. He cannot separate down the football field effectively enough to take top off coverages, and he is what he is down the field. It's a turn your body to the quarterback, leap, try to make a contested catch, and then fall down. That's what he is down the fild, right?
Yeah, I think that's been well established. Yeah, I don't think that's going to change.
How is that going to change? Right. That's my question. Is how are you going to change that?
Yeah, I don't think that changes his game too much. Yeah, I'm all with you with finding that receiver with that beep oh crap speed. I'm all for it.
You got to find somebody that can put the football in the hands and make plays for you.
Yeah, and apparently Deontay just tweeted something. I don't know. There's some reaction on Twitter. He has me blocked, so I can't see it. I don't know what he said.
It says, it's just it's a meme. It's attitude. I think. Hold on here. It is. Okay. Stop keeping up with me if you don't FW me. It's weird. What's FW mean?
F with the F word with like mess with me. I'm trying to explain this and it's not going to go well.
Stop keeping up with me if you don't FW me. Period. It's weird.
Yeah. Probably just some frustration there from Deontay, obviously.
I don't know what FW means. Is that F with me?
Yes, F with me. Yes.
Okay. All right.
Yeah.
You silly kids with your letters.
Yeah, as soon as I heard meme, I went, "Oh, this is going to be tough to describe on an audio format." It's an emotional time, so I try to take a step back for 24 hours and just not let emotions. And I'm not criticizing Deontay here, but just myself. I just try to pull back for a day.
Jeff Berg writes in, howdy, fellas, another yucky playoff game. How much do we put on coaching in the last 4 playoff games? Different players and different assistant coaches, yet giving up way too many points. Is this more execution, which should be some reflection on coaching when it's consistent, or is it more on the coaches? Thanks for entertainment you provided all season. Look, I mean, it's a lot of everything. You got to put players in position to make plays, and you got to have the players execute and make plays. I mean, there really has been a lot of dysfunction where this team gets to the playoffs as of late the last 5 years.
Yeah. There's an execution issue, but when you have more of those long-standing trends, like 4 straight games with bad playoff defense, it does reflect more on coaching, because now you're seeing patterns with different players and different years and stuff like that, and that becomes more of a reflection on coaching some of the bigger macro stuff.
I mean, you're giving up 40-something points to a Jacksonville team. I mean, how does that happen? That was missing a couple of linemen too, right? If I have memory serves me, and has Blake freaking Bortles, right?
Yeah. I
don't. It's a bad habit to get into ranking playoff disappointments.
Yeah, not a place you want to be.
But that's where we're at right now.
Mm-hmm.
I am less disappointed about this playoff loss Sunday night to the Chiefs than maybe all of them, I think.
Yeah. Well, let's rank the last 4. From the most painful to the least painful. To me, the most painful is the loss last year to Cleveland, the wild card game. Would you agree? Would you put Jacksonville there?
I'd probably put Jacksonville there, to be honest with you. I would rank them Jacksonville because they just plain out should have won that game. That was a stone cold lead pipe lock of the week, of the century, of the year. And then next would be the Cleveland game with Cleveland missing all, coming to Pittsburgh and missing all those linemen. And I don't think they had their head coach. And so that would be the next one in there. Then the Patriots would be the next one in there, because that was the game that they lost Le'Veon Bell early in the game. I think we had who was the wide receiver starting in that game?
Kobe Hamilton
starting in that game. And just, I mean, Brady at his best and there. And then the one against the Chiefs would be the one, that least frustrates me, I guess.
Yeah, I would flip the Browns and Jags game. It's close, but just to lose to the Browns, and because they're the Browns and now Browns fans don't shut up forever, kind of sucks. So I go Cleveland, Jacksonville, New England, Kansas City as my ranking. But as you said, when you're ranking those things, it's not a fun game to play.
Yeah, that's not the standard, I don't think.
That's for sure.
Let's see. Hank Moose writes in, is it possible to trade Ray's heart to Claypool or Johnson? We'd really have something then. Look, I mean, if you could make a receiver out of Washington, Ray, Deontay, and Claypool, holy moly, and JuJu, you'd really have something there. If you could take a little piece of all those guys, but unfortunately you can't. Look, I've given Ray a lot of crap from day one, a lot of it, but that guy's tough. I'll tell you that. I don't think he is what he is right now, and maybe his ceiling, or it definitely was the ceiling, a little bit higher than what I gave him credit for, but not a guy that I envision getting 7-8 targets a game moving forward.
Yeah. We'll see what happens with JuJu and what they do to add. They're going to add to the receiver group in some form or fashion. We'll just see who and where and how and all those things.
Dan Devlin writes in, well, not the way I wanted to see the season end, but a playoff berth this year seems like a win overall. Nothing against Najee, but this game explains why NFL running backs are fungible. I look forward to next few years, but the only way his pick is justified in my mind is a second contract. Do you bring back any coordinators? Danny Smith seems to be the only one I can justify. He writes, did the D fix communication issue this year, or did the issue spread to the offense? D. Johnson Wolf, his drops were just a killer. Not that it matters, but was the tackle eligible play legal? The move on TJ seemed illegal. Thanks for the great year. Looking forward to the offseason. Take care. Look, nobody going to tell me anything different when it comes to my thoughts on running backs being fungible. So I'll just move back. I'll just piss people off when I talk about it. I disagree, though, when it comes to second contract to some degree. I just think the running back position's fungible, plain and simple. I don't care how many contracts you give a running back these days in my eyes. He says, do you bring back any coordinators? Alex, communication issues, address those.
Yeah, I don't think communication issues, at least in the coverage game and the pass game, were big factors this season. There were some poor run fits and some misalignments in the run game, which seemed like a bigger issue in terms of like communication and things like that. Coordinator, I don't think Butler's coming back. Canada, I think it could go either way. Danny Smith should be back, and so that'll be your coordinator watch there. And so, who's going to replace Butler? Probably either Austin or Dunbar, probably leaning Austin right now. And then if Canada's gone, Sullivan would be the in-house guy to look at. But then, of course, they could and arguably should look out of house.
Yeah, I mean, is Danny Smith the stone cold lock to return?
I don't know where he's at contractually, and that's usually when a team makes moves. But I mean, I'm not going to call anything a lock when I have so limited information to work off of, but I believe he'll be back.
Yeah, I think we both agree, though, that Keith Butler probably not going to be back, though, right?
Yeah, it'll be the old retirement. Get out of here. We'll call retirement Bruce Arians kind of thing with Butts.
What did you think about the play with TJ? He did toss TJ around quite a bit there.
Yeah, but what are you going to call on that? Holding? I mean, what do you even want to call? He's technically just trying to like shed and release, and TJ's got him locked up too, so I think it was a legal play.
Let's see here. Brandon Hatcher. Hey, David, Alex, love the podcast throughout the last 5 years. Y'all have been part of my life for learning and therapy. Win or lose, you keep it real and are a great part of Steelers Nation. I want to share my favorite Ben memory or memories, which has nothing to do with the games, but rather the time before each game. I have been to Chicago, Indy, Miami, Heinz Field for games, and my favorite part is getting there early to watch warm-ups. We noticed Ben going to every player and saying a few words to each guy before the game. Every game he would do this, at least the ones that I went to, he says, and it was these moments I realized how much of a leader he is. Heavy is the head that wears the crown, and Ben was a great leader of this team for past decade. It's going to be weird not seeing him out there on Sundays, and I'm happy to have a Hall of Fame guy slinging the ball and leading the team for the last 2 decades. Appreciate all you do. That's Brandon Charlotte by way of Chicago. Yeah, look, I mean, there's you forget, you see what's happened with him, dating back to, 2017, 2018 and all. But even, towards the end, even that final, touchdown pass that he threw to Antonio Brown against the Saints that one year. I mean, but when his ability to not extend the play as much went away from him, but I mean, a lot of people are going to, I think, the sands of the hourglass are probably going to forget a lot of that, man, because it used to be hashtag Ben being Ben, that's what I'll always remember about Ben, and the toughness. I mean, you had to pull that guy off the field with a tow truck or semi, just how tough he was, and the ability to extend the play and all the comebacks, and you never felt like you were out of the game, right. Especially the way the Steelers play, it was always, and man, even if they're trailing, there's part of you say, Ben will bring him back,
Yeah. That's well said by you and by Brandon. I think people will remember when they kind of get away from this year a bit about Ben and his prime and the Sandlot plays and those kinds of things, because that really was what made him a household name and won Super Bowls and had all those great moments and memories. But yeah, I mean, he evolved into a pocket passer and was still a really good quarterback for many years. But when the mobility really went down, when his knees really got bad, when the arms started to wane, then it really started to get bad and ugly. And that really has been, I think, probably began in 18 and then the injury happened, and then the last 2 years have been, he still played well and had moments, but obviously not the way that he used to.
Boy, there was a couple of times this early in this season, man, I was wondering if he's going to make it. Some of those hits, of those hits he was taking early on in the season were just, oh man, and just didn't have the mobility anymore. Didn't really, he could still make a lot of throws. It's just teams figured out that if he's not extending the play, that he's not as dangerous down outside the numbers. You know what I'm saying?
His velocity was still decent. Like, I don't think his velocity is bad, but some of the downfield throws are just, for whatever reason, not there anymore.
Right. Now, he could still throw it down the seam if he needed to and walk it out there, if you will. But those just those opportunities seemed a lot more red zone type stuff. Things where he wasn't, he would take more of a chance inside the red zone to drill it down, but between the numbers past, say, 15 yards down the line of scrimmage. But man, outside, throws outside now, those haven't been there for a long, long time.
Yeah, and they've been trying to make those plays happen, and they just largely have not been.
I mean, once Martavis was gone, too. I mean, and really the only time I think kind of we've really seen. I mean, you have a couple instances. I think going back last year, a throw against the Colts down there to Deontay Johnson, and then obviously Chase Claypool against the Broncos and all. But those in stride cover 1 or cover 3 beaters outside the numbers, just have been non-existent.
Yeah. So that's what I think about when I think about the next quarterback for this team. Who's going to produce the big play downfield? Who's going to be able to create mobility? What were the ills of this offense? Let's try to replicate, or let's try not replicate, but let's try to fix the ills of this offense. And those are two of the biggest ones for me.
Cosmo writes in, thank you for the whole Steelers Depot team for a fun and informative season. Whatever ends up happening with JuJu, I have nothing but love for the kid and will not tolerate heat from Steelers Nation in a league where there are guys drunk driving, speeding at 130 miles an hour and getting innocent drivers killed or punching women. JuJu dancing on social media and being happy-go-lucky kid does not bother me in the slightest. He is all business on the field. He's not a diva. He's a selfless player, playing in the slot when he had more success to the outside. All he does is block, catch the ball, and get tough yak. Much love to 19 and 7. Look, I mean, I've said it for forever. I don't know how you don't like JuJu. I mean, yeah, in today's social media world, for an old guy like me, a lot of that stuff I don't get really, I guess overall, but it's not the end all do all. I mean, I did kind of wish that he wouldn't have danced on a few of those logos on the road. But I mean, if that's the worst thing that we're talking about with that guy, I mean, heck, just him battling back from this shoulder injury that he had, I think speaks volumes to about the guy. I mean, you listened to his press conference last night. It's very genuine. The guy just loves football. He loves his teammates. He loved Ben Roethlisberger. But in the same notion, he is a guy that's kind of stated, especially ahead of this season, man, I sure wish I wasn't, if I'm going to play in the slot, I wish I wasn't just running these 3-yard routes, these running back routes. So, and in so many words, and it's hard to blame him. He says who the quarterback ends up being on his team going to play a part in his decision this year. There's not going to be a huge market for JuJu, but there will be a market for JuJu. And I think it was a smart by him to show that he was back from that shoulder injury as well. Probably the agent's probably saying, hey, hold on there. Maybe you don't want to do that. But I think it was a smart decision on his part.
I agree. There's not going to be any lingering questions about his health or availability and things like that. Yeah, what his market is, I'm not sure. There will be some teams interested, no doubt about it. It's 50-50 for me on whether or not JuJu returns. He says he wants to. I believe him, but will there be the supporting cast around him? Will there be a change in coordinator? All those things could be factors, and probably almost certainly will be factors in his future with the team. Absolutely.
And once again, it's a shame that things have worked out the way for him, the way they did, especially with the salary cap situation and all the things that kind of went on with him with his market value kind of being not what he hoped it would be,
Yeah, so we'll see. One other quick note here I should have mentioned earlier, as you wrote in the morning, Dave, Steelers will have the 20th pick in the 2022 NFL draft. So the first round pick, assuming they do not make a trade, will come at pick number 20 for the Steelers.
And that is the first time since, when did I write? Hold on here.
Been a while, it sounds like.
Yeah. The last time the Steelers drafted 20th overall was in 1985, and they selected defensive end Darrell Sims out of Nebraska in the first round with that pick. Prior to that, the Steelers had selected 20th overall in the draft 3 other times, in 1951, 1952, and 1960. All 3 times way before I was born. I was born in 68 there. So, all right, let's get to, we got a few more in here. Make sure we get some of these knocked out here so they don't carry over to the next show. Michael writes in, the ending wasn't the one that we had hoped for, but it is the ending we all expected and more than likely needed. Ben may be retiring. It may be the end of the era, but the Pittsburgh Steelers will be back. He writes, I look forward to listening to Dave and Alex and the Steelers Depot crew hold my hand through the Ben Roethlisberger-less Steelers era, a new era, bittersweet, but exciting. Here we go. Look, it is going to be quite because a lot of you listening and guys like Alex, I mean, Ben Roethlisberger is all you know, right?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it's all I know. It'll be very weird for myself and so many like me.
Let's see. Larissa writes in, great analysis and overall job. As always, the wild card game was sad to watch, but predictable. But I may have made up my mind about Matt Canada. He has to go. I really don't understand what he's doing and why. Is he trying to make most of the players make the most of the players that he has, or is this how he always calls plays? They don't make sense to me at all. There seems to be no goal of getting a first down. Second, the Steelers knew that this was Ben's last season. Yet, in my opinion, and I believe Dave, this is yours as well, they failed to surround him with protection. We had a bunch of backups protecting an immobile 39-year-old quarterback. How do you not try to at least adjust the center and left tackle position in the 2020 draft or free agency? Larissa writes, I knew we didn't have much money, but what's the point of having Ben back if he has half a second to throw? And last thing is that you guys mentioned several podcasts ago that Dan Moore will likely be the starter next season, which is shocking. Isn't Pittsburgh about being elite? And that starts with a good offensive line, yet we don't have a single elite guy on the offensive line. In my opinion, if we want a new quarterback to succeed, we cannot get away with serviceable guys. We have to address the offensive line, get elite guys, blah, 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 blah. Thanks for all you do, Larissa. Look, we'll have plenty of time to dissect down Dan Moore, but I thought Dan Moore progressed as the season went on. I kind of find it hard to believe that Dan Moore's not going to be your starting week 1 left tackle. I'll tell you that.
Yeah, I'm with you. And make no mistake, saying that Moore's played well and is probably going to be the left tackle next year does not mean this O-line is fixed and done. You don't touch it. There's a lot of emphasis on the right side, potentially center as well, that needs to be done. So this O-line is by no means complete or done, or they're just going to let guys grow and progress and not make other outside moves. They could and they should be doing that, and I expect them to. But listen, Alejandro Villanueva, he wasn't an elite left tackle, and he played well, and his O-line played well for quite some time. So yeah, I think Moore's played well. His progression's strong, and there's a lot of focus that has to be on other areas of the O-line right now.
Yeah. Look, what do you do? What do you do with Kendrick Green? I think Ben told you what you do with him, and even then, I'm not convinced it's going to work out. But I don't think you have any other choice but to try to move Kendrick Green to guard and keep your fingers crossed that Dave is wrong there. I don't think he's an NFL center at this point. And I think Dan Moore is going to be your left tackle. Hopefully Dotson. Boy, you want to talk about disappointing season. Never got Dotson back from IR. And that was a guy that you probably, or I went into this season thinking, well, the guy that I'm least worried about on this offensive line is Kevin Dotson. Well, you got You never got him back from that ankle injury. From there, what are you going to do at center? Trey Turner, I don't think you waste any time unless Trey Turner wants to come back and play for the minimum. But even then, it feels like you got to do something there. And we'll see what happens with Chukwuma Okorafor. Has he played well enough that there's going to be at least one team out there that's going to pay him more than what Pittsburgh willing to pay him? I think it's possible. Would you rather go with the devil and pay him?
At this point, I don't think I would. I think a season was fine, but I don't think it's a great fit at right tackle, and I think you want a higher level player than that. And I'm not going to willingly pay money for an average player.
Well, then you certainly aren't paying Zach Banner $5 million to come back, are you?
No, I said it before. Unless Pittsburgh's MO is that Banner's like your no-brainer day one starter at right tackle, which I very much doubt is the case, then you probably have to cut him. And see, I think Turner's gone. I think Okorafor's probably gone. Banner, we'll see. It just makes a lot of sense to cut him. It's hard to really imagine that they keep him at this point, and they kind of rebuild it on that right side.
Hank writes in, the search begins. The more I think about it, the more I like at least bringing in Trubisky, big, mobile, good experience playing behind Allen, and who knows how much of his problems in Chicago were because of Nagy. What do y'all think? I'm not a huge Trubisky fan, to be quite honest with you, Hank. I don't see a better realistic free agent option. Could be a bust, but high side. But high upside. Look, if you got Trubisky for peanuts, I mean, why wouldn't you throw him in to the mix there? But I'm definitely not paying that. I'm not tying up the franchise to him. If you want to bring him in to compete, almost like you did Dwayne Haskins, have at it, But I don't think I'm tying a lot of money up with a guy like Trubisky.
Yeah, he wouldn't command much, I don't think. I'm not really interested in bringing him in. I mean, I haven't watched him much in Buffalo. I know Chicago was kind of a mess, so I don't know. I mean, I think they're going to add somebody. Where and how and who are all big questions. I don't think you really close many doors, though, on what you do at the quarterback position, because I think you got to keep a very, very open mind.
I mean, a lot. This is one of the biggest questions this team obviously has faced, not only facing this offseason, but in a long time. Within that, though, I think it's going to end up, I'm going to give you a large window, folks. It's going to end up somewhere between non-high dollar guys like Wilson and Aaron Rodgers. The Matt Ryans is it's not gonna be one of those guys. I've said that right from the get go. I didn't think it'd be one of those guys. So lower your sights somewhere under that, and not a week one rookie quarterback.
Do you still think they don't make any outside moves where they just kind of run it back? I know you'd mentioned that like 2 weeks ago with Rudolph.
I said somewhere in between that window that I just gave you. So that's a large window that opens it up to Mason, that opens up to the Mariotas, your Jacoby Brissett's, those kind of things. So
right. But do you think they bring somebody in some capacity?
I say yes. I think it's possible. Yes, I think it's possible, but I don't think it's going to be the guy that people are throwing parades for.
Okay.
I mean, I think you've got to do something. It's either going to be someone from the outside or a draft pick. What does this team really think about Dwayne Haskins at this point? I don't see how they can think much of him, but they're probably going to restricted tender him. Mm-hmm. Will they draft a quarterback in the first round? That's the big question. If you don't, then why draft one? Really, basically it feels like can you get Pickett or and look, I haven't watched enough of Corral yet to really kind of speak of him yet. And I've obviously seen enough of Carson Strong, but he's not going to give you that mobility,
Yeah, I think Sam Howell from North Carolina is the name I've been kicking around.
Oh man, I just the early kind of thoughts on him that I have on him in the limited amount of tape's not great, but even so, that quarterback's not going to be the week one guy, I don't think. If you did draft a quarterback, I don't think he's going to play. I think the plan will be what it was with Ben Roethlisberger. That's not to play him as a rookie season. Now, obviously, you had circumstances come up that you played Ben Roethlisberger, and probably thank God you did. But I'm willing to bet if they do draft any quarterback that, barring injury, that kid's not going to play in his rookie season until maybe later on in his rookie season.
Yeah, I get that, but I don't like to tell rookie quarterbacks they can't play right away, because if they can prove it and they're the best guy, they're the best guy. I think each guy's different, but those are all questions for obviously long down the road.
Gustavo writes in, I'm really glad for the season we had, and the team certainly exceeded our expectations. However, it's impossible to not see that this team has lost its last 4 playoff games by double-digit points, apart from the Jaguars game where we scored last-second TD to make it a 3-point game. Isn't this something to be concerned about, Mike Tomlin, especially when 2 of those games we were favorites? Thank you for being a wonderful podcast and had the best coverage of the Steelers once again. Look, it is. I think you look at this organization, this team as a totality right now. There's a lot to be concerned about here. Not just the defense and the points that this team's given up in the last 4 playoff games. There is a lot to be concerned about as a Steelers fan right now.
Yeah, like I said, macro, big picture level, it's been disappointing. This team has not won a playoff game since 2016. They've only won 3 playoff games in the last 11 years. And so those things are disturbing, disappointing, and you had a franchise quarterback, and that's what you came up with, and that is a failure.
Jay writes in, gloom, despair, and agony on me. Hey, guys, you guys are the best in the business. I appreciate what you do for all Steelers fans. Before I ask my question, let me say this. I had no delusions that we were going to win this game, but I am thankful that I got to see Ben play his last game and got to watch it live. That was truly something special. I meant to send you this question a few days ago, but I think it's just as relevant after the game. I will disclaim this by saying that I have never played or coached football. I'm therefore no expert. However, I believe that when you have as many things to improve upon as the Steelers did from their first meeting with the Chiefs, each position group should pick 1 or 2 key things that they really focus on for the next game. I know they only had a week to prepare, but their last game was recent. They certainly had tape to work with. My question is, do you think they did that? Did they improve the 1 or 2 key things per position group in order to give themselves a chance? He says, I was at the game in the nosebleeds, and it's really hard to tell much of anything from there. I appreciate your perspective. The question might make more sense to answer after you watch the all 22. So that's the case. No worries. I'm looking forward to postseason and draft coverage. Let's go rebuild, reboot, or whatever we are calling this thing. Thanks again for being the best. Let's go Steelers. Jay. A lot there to chew on. Look, some of the things they did early defensively, it gave you a little bit of hope.
Mm-hmm.
Not offensively.
Yeah. Is he asking just from this game, did they fix those things, or is he asking like the whole season?
I think he's saying from the last game against the Chiefs to this game versus the Chiefs. Okay. Does it feel like they picked out a couple of things that maybe they needed to go get better on and fix? And but you got to remember, the other team's trying to figure out, to do things too. They're paid to counteract your counteractions, if you will. Look, this team didn't have Travis Kelce that first time. The Steelers defense did a good job early. The offense did not respond. You can't expect this defense to continue. Could they have gotten off of a few more third downs in this game? Yeah, probably. But this thing snowballed. Once they got the first 5, if I would have told everybody out there, the Steelers would have not given up any points to the Chiefs through 5 possessions of the game, what do you think people would have thought?
You would take it. You'd be like, hey, we got a ball game. We got a chance. And that was the position they were in. But as you said, KC can hit you so quick and so much that it's hard to – you look up when you're down 21-7 and you feel like the game's already over.
They have the ability to adjust offensively and the players to do that with more so than the Steelers offense had. It was the same old Steelers on the offensive side of football there.
Yeah, and from an execution or from a change standpoint, it didn't feel like there were big schematic changes. Maybe some of those subtle things Tomlin talked about. We'll have to see the tape, but just some better execution defensively was kind of the big key.
Matt writes in, Steeler fans could look at Kansas City and how they completely rebuilt their offensive line in one season. What was it about Trey Smith that we missed? Did medicals push him down? Yeah, I think it was something heart-related or something with Trey. For the Steelers, I think the rebuild has to start at center and right guard, and Turner needs to go. Can't throw a rookie in behind that line. Thanks, Matt. Yeah, look, boy, Art Rooney's going to have a lot of directives to come out of this upcoming meeting. There are a lot of things to fix. The offensive line, definitely one of those. There, you don't think, at least you wouldn't think now this team has to address the running back or tight end position in the draft. Everything else goes on the table at this point here. And look, I think it is a testament and we said that early in the show, what the Chiefs did, the quick turnaround with that offensive line. With theirs just goes to show you how quickly you can fix an offensive line, I think.
Yeah, they did it in an offseason and did it well with trading for Brown, signing Thuney, drafting Humphrey and Smith. They laid the blueprint of how to do it.
Sim Football Critic, hate to say this isn't a Victory Monday, but somehow knew it was coming. Not sure why anyone in the Steeler Nation would expect to see anything different from what we've all seen all season. The Steelers' offense was just not good consistently. O-line, Canada, Ben, all the above. The game came down to possession. Steelers went 3 and out on 5 for their first 7 drives. It was just a matter of time before the defense would break down. As it stands today, which position is the biggest need? The answer to that is yes. Thanks guys. I appreciate the content this season. Look forward to the future. This offseason will be like no other. That's about the truest statement maybe you make there. This offseason will be like no other there. This team wasn't good on both sides of the football going into this game. I think we knew that. And yeah, the offense not doing what they needed to do on those first drives was important. And then once it got to KC doing what they did there, about the 5-minute mark, game is over.
Yeah. Well said.
What is the biggest need? A bunch of biggest needs. The biggest need, you didn't figure out who's going to play quarterback for this team, obviously.
Yeah, that's what it comes back to. You know, you're in two camps. Either you have a franchise quarterback or you're searching for one. Pittsburgh is firmly in that searching for one camp. There are certainly other issues to address. O-line, receiver, as the Sim Football Critic said, or as you said, Dave, yes, is the answer to what the biggest need is, but it all comes back to quarterback.
Let me get some names we haven't read before here. Ramon Angulo Garcia. Hey, guys, I was waiting until the end of the season to ask about this. This offseason feels like it's going to be the most interesting one in recent years, especially with the available cap space. Do you remember the last time this team had more than $40 million in available cap space, and what did they do with the money? Well, I mean, because of the way the cap has escalated over the years, there's never been an instant. I mean, it doesn't feel like too many years ago the cap was like what? 120 million.
Yeah.
Right. Heck, I remember 90 something million, so no, they've never been. Now, I guess you're talking relative to
right. What percentage of cap space by better metric?
Man, it would have to been before Ben got his first contract, I would imagine. And no, I don't remember. I obviously didn't track the cap as extensively back then as I do now. Y'all gonna need some umbrellas here pretty soon for some of the rain I'm going to bring on some of that $40 million cap number. Look, they're still obviously going to have a lot of cap space in here, but a lot of that's going to get slowly start eating up here with work ahead and that kind of stuff. I get the overall message that you're sending, and they better be willing to throw some money at some of these holes, because I don't think they're going to get them all filled during the draft.
Yeah, well said. And yeah, I'm looking forward to you painting, I think, a clearer and more accurate picture of the cap space in the coming days. I
mean, look, it's obviously going to be better than it's been in a while, but people imagine it's going to be one thing. It's not going to be quite that. Let's see. David Hutch, congrats. You've just been promoted to Rooney status for 5 minutes. What is your plan for the coaching staff going forward? For myself, I always roll my eyes a bit with the Tomlin haters and Steelers Depot comment sections. I've loved watching and listening to Tomlin as a coach, and I hope to see him coach the Steelers for many years to come. That said, I do feel like they've been a bit out of a rut for 4 or 5 years. The coordinators are uninspiring, and it may be time for Rooney to Tomlin ultimatum for some big changes. I think my call would be this. It's time for a major reset. I really want you to be part of it, Mike. but you need to show us that you're the right man for the next chapter of the Steelers' legacy. I want you to clean house this offseason. You need to hire 3 coordinators, all outside hires. Then I'll give you 2 seasons to build this team and demonstrate that the source of the recent malaise is not you. Stephen goes on to write, what do you think about that take? And what would yours be if someone made you king of the world for a day? Thanks for your great work. Excited to tune in for another pre-draft season.
Yeah, those are awfully big questions coming right off a really disappointing loss. Like I said, I think Butler's gone. Canada, I'm not as fervent about the fire Canada, thought as most fans are. Not that I think he did a great job or a good job this year, but I'm not as strongly, at least not at this moment. And I would keep Danny Smith. So that's made a little bias there. But again, I think special teams was pretty solid this season. I mean, Harvard had his ups and downs, obviously, but put that aside, I thought Smith's unit did a good job.
Look, yeah, I guess it all depends on what you're going to do at quarterback, what kind of offense you're going to run. Does that offense really fit what the core of maybe Matt Canada wants to run? There's a lot of questions there that we don't know. You got to admit, to some degree, Matt Canada was hampered by Ben Roethlisberger. He was hampered by the offensive line for sure. Could any other offensive coordinator made salad out of this chicken, what?
Yeah, there's always things you could do better. I think there were some things Canada did well and some things he didn't. I think he's shown he can have an offense with different types of quarterbacks. I don't think he needs a specific type of guy to run his offense. There are some things that a mobile quarterback can obviously help lend and evolve. And Tomlin's talked up quarterback mobility. So I think the next guy is going to have some level of mobility at least, but I don't know. I have to kind of think about that one more.
There's so many questions on the offensive side of football, just other than saying, okay, Matt, got to go. See ya. Just merely bringing in a new offensive coordinator is not going to solve your problems.
Yeah. There's a lot of issues here. Then again, some of the work those coaches do are behind the scenes stuff that we don't get to really see, the work Monday through Saturday, which is really how you evaluate those guys internally, not from an on-field product, but from a game plan preparation, communication, teaching, informational standpoint.
I mean, every year, good or bad, we always see the offensive coordinator, fans want the offensive coordinator fired. Look, it's not going to surprise me either way with this. For several reasons we mentioned several times throughout this thing. The Steelers might want to go a whole different direction. They might know enough about Matt Canada after 1 year as offensive coordinator, 1 year as quarterbacks coach. Matt Canada might not want to be around. Maybe he wants to go back to college or something. There, as Alex said, he doesn't have a big history of staying rooted in places there. So I think you could see two new coordinators with this thing, and I wouldn't bat an eye at it.
No, neither. The question is, are they going to be more internal promotions, which has been the team's MO? Are they going to be outside hires? They're obviously going to look at guys outside, but they could be internal, especially defensively. There is some, hotshot. Vic Fangio's not coming to Pittsburgh to be under Tomlin's thumb, So I think that's more of an internal option. OC, if there's a change there, is more likely to be an outsider option. But don't forget about Mike Sullivan, because he's a disciplined guy, quarterback coach, and that could work well. As OC's got OC experience as well.
Thomas writes in, this will be the last one. Thomas from Johnstown, but stuck in Washington. I'll keep 3 things real short for Jens. Less of a question, more comment. So proud of this team's fight and resilience to make the playoffs, win Ben's final at Heinz Field, and keep fighting for 7. Not a pretty game, but an expected result. We have to appreciate having it so good as a fan base. Now, my big question, how many of the Steelers' 17 unrestricted free agents do you think could we replace in free agents or the draft without a huge dip in ability or huge investment? Number 3, finally, thank you for another great season. You and Alex and the whole team deliver unparalleled coverage. Grateful to be a fan of the greatest franchise in sports and able to take all that throughout the greatest coverage in sports. Much love. Thomas, it's too much to answer a question about 17 unrestricted free agents. You don't want us to cram one offseason show into one 5-minute answer here, and it'd be longer than 5 minutes. Trust me, we are going to go through these guys one by one, and we'll do it probably 5 times each, if not more. That's how long the off season is here. So we appreciate everybody listening. We know people are going to want us to solve the off season in one show with a set of 5 questions, but that's not the way it's going to work for us to do it justice. There'll be articles on Steelers Depot about the cap, about free agents. We'll talk about it. It's going to be a long off season, Alex.
Yeah, we have nothing but time, like I said, and I promise we'll address all those questions because this will be a very weighty offseason. So looking forward to it, but yeah, I don't have to solve it all today.
All right, I think my Super Bowl, I made you make a Super Bowl pick before, and I made mine on Twitter as well, too. I had Green Bay before the playoffs started. Green Bay over the Bills, I think.
Yeah, I had the Packers over the Chiefs. So both our predictions still intact after one weekend of play.
All right. You and I will look at the all 22. We'll get after it again on Wednesday. We'll stay with the 3-show week format. Probably up until about Super Bowl, maybe, and then we'll look at it from there. Who knows? Maybe we'll cut it short sooner once we get through. But there's going to be enough to keep Alex and I busy here for at least the next couple of weeks here, I think, for 3 shows a week. So until Wednesday, you can follow me on Twitter at Steelers Depot. Follow Alex on Twitter at Alex_Kozora. Follow the show at Terrible Podcast. Email the show, theterriblepodcast@gmail.com. If you like what we do and want to donate to the cause, go to SteelersDepot.com. Hit the donate button, upright navigational bar. Ad-free version, SteelersDepot.com. Hit the ad-free button. Shout out to Alex Kozora. Shout out to Matthew Marksey, my brothers from another mother. I could not do this site would not be what it is right now without those 2 guys. And then everybody else that contributes on the site. There's a long list of names there, but a tremendous site. Thanks to you, the listener, and the surfer. Another record season for Steelers Depot. We, obviously we couldn't do it without the listeners and the surfers and all. So just entirely blessed to have the people contributing in the manner that they do. Alex, would you like to add anything?
No, just echo those thoughts. It's been a great year with our team that we've expanded, added some great people, and obviously the people we've already had, just really thankful and grateful they're on our side. And it could not be done with just myself or just Dave or just Matthew or just the 3 of us. We need all their help, and it's appreciated. And of course, I'm warning, I already got people asking me about draft stuff. Let's start profiles and all that. And it's coming. We got some really fun, exciting stuff for you guys coming up for the off season. So there's a lot more content obviously coming your guys' way.
All right, into the off season we go, Alex. And as always, thanks for listening to the Terrible Podcast with Dave and Alex.